Three, two, one. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash. Today's comic is Thor #1, or Legacy number 727, which I'm not exactly sure that's even the right legacy number because Marvel has totally screwed this up. They're putting the King Thor miniseries into the legacy numbers. And then apparently I was talking to my boy Jimmy over at Comic Quirks, and he was saying that the numbers weren't, when he was trying to add up the numbers, it didn't make sense how they connected, like they were missing some numbers. What a joke this has all become. They should have just kept the damn numbering. The legacy numbers should have just been the numbers, and just why try to reinvent the wheel of comic numbers? It's just become absurd. Anyways, this is a new run by Donny Cates. I wish it was 727, but I am glad that it's not the old Thor. Much respect to my boy Jimmy over there. He loves Jason Aaron Thor. I credit Jason Aaron for ruining Thor. Thor is one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time, and I absolutely hate what Jason Aaron has done. Now, I do want to read his God King series. I think it's called God King. Is it God King? The God Butcher. Anyways, it's the one that he did with Asad Rabik, the art. It's beautiful painted art. It looks gorgeous. I do think Jason Aaron's got some talent in him, and he's got some stories to tell. I do want to be open-minded as possible. But the mainstream run of Thor that he did, don't even get me started on the Jane Foster nonsense. It turns my stomach when I think about it. Now, Donny Cates, on the other hand, is one of the guys responsible for getting me to come back to Marvel. If you don't know anything about me, I'm an old school Marvel fanboy. Jim Shooter era is my favorite era. I think it's one of the greatest times of comic books. It's absolutely Marvel's golden age. And my Thor is the Walt Simonson Thor. If you've read that series, you kind of know why. Walt Simonson did something to Thor that, number one, he was a great artist. Walt Simonson's a great artist. He's also a great writer. But he made Thor into beyond just this cheesy Marvel superhero. He brought in the Norse mythos. He really focused on Thor being a god in this other realm, and bringing in not just the cosmic aspects, which kind of were there before, but the magical aspects of Asgard. And there was a lot of world building. Thor was no longer just a super guy with a hammer. He was part of this whole fantasy world that you wanted to know more about. I wanted to know more about these characters, which were characters I was already interested in because I'm a fan of the Norse mythology myself already. But Marvel had kind of its own coat of paint, if you will. So, I knew who Odin the Allfather was, but I didn't know who the Marvel Odin was. And seeing how Walt put that all together and then also blended it into and made it fit into the Marvel Universe was fascinating. That was one of the great things that he'd contributed to the Thor line. And I think it's one thing that Marvel ended up kind of forgetting later down the road. And certain creators are able to do that, to redefine the character and make it. It's kind of, what Frank Miller did to Daredevil. Daredevil was a guy who was an acrobatic kind of street-level superhero, but it wasn't until Frank Miller came along and made Daredevil part of this whole mystic mythology of, ninjas and, these spiritual martial arts and all this cool stuff with stick. That took Daredevil to a new realm. It made an interesting character fascinating. What Chris Claremont did with the X-Men. They were just a bunch of costume heroes with extraordinary powers, is the way Stan Lee envisioned it. When Chris Claremont came on, and with John Byrne's help, shaped it into this whole legacy of mutants and things that we know today that wouldn't have really been the case without Chris Claremont's vision. Now, of course, just like Walt Simonson, I think Marvel lost the plot. It's been too far away from these creative visionaries. But my point is that creative visionaries can help define a character and take something that maybe you're not that interested in and elevate it to a new level, or reinvigorate a stale franchise. Donny Cates did that for me for Venom. Venom was a character that I loved as a Spider-Man villain, right? He's my favorite Spider-Man villain. And that era of Amazing Spider-Man with Todd McFarlane and Dave Michelini writing was fantastic. And when they tried to put Venom into this anti-hero role, if you remember the Lethal Protector, I tried to stay on because I liked Venom, but I ended up noping. It just didn't work for me. I was like, he doesn't fit. He's not compelling as a hero. He's compelling as a nemesis to Spider-Man. So sometimes you can't make that jump. But what Donny Cates did is he built on the mythos. He did what these other guys I just mentioned did for their respective franchise. He built into the symbiote mythos and made it more than we once thought it was. Some people are like, oh, no, the god or whatever. I think that's fascinating. That's something we never would have thought of back in the days when they were just exploring what the heck the Venom symbiote even was. No one knew in the beginning. It was just random. They just made up, oh, it's some weird thing from Secret Wars world. But it's not. Not anymore. And furthermore, Donny Cates decided that Eddie Brock is a person. He's a real person with a real past. What makes him tick? What makes him move forward? And why should we care about him? And he's doing a fantastic job. That's why you want to read Venom. And that's one of the reasons I'm reading Marvel Comics. And I'm not even really, like I said, I wasn't a big Venom fan. I just heard of what he was doing. And Ryan Stegman's probably the best artist. So yada yada, I'm boring you. So fast forward, Thor's one of my favorite characters. Donny Cates is writing him. I want to see if he can fix the problems that were created under the Jason Aaron run. So we start off, big splash page. Far beyond the fields we know, and lo, in the darkness there was thunder, and racing behind it the roaring voice of a God-made king. Hear me, his testament begins. The old king is gone. His words soar across the heavens of Vanaheim. For the Vanir, the sisters of Asgard, it is a humming sound of peace. And here too in the skies of Alfheim, a rumbling decree, a war well fought. The light elves cheer and weep that the darkness may never touch their bright shores again. In the dark fields of Nidavellir, the dwarves sing and drink as Mjolnir, the Smasher, rumbles for them as well. And in Jotunheim, the frost giants feel, for the first time in a long time, a bit of chill running down their backs. The message is the same for all to hear. Even in the hottest pit of damnation, in Muspelheim, the demons hear it over the wail of the eternal flames. We have, all of us, warred enough for 1,000 lifetimes, the hammer speaks. Its voice resounds across Vartalheim, across the beaten ears of a wound-licking dark elves. Enough blood has been spilled in the 10 realms, enough death. From the rose-scented rainstorms of heaven to the deepest hollows of Niflheim, it ends now, it ends forever. It ends with me. So hear this, realms of the world ash, for I shall say it only once. Let there be peace, or let there be thunder. Krakoom! And I thought this was a fantastic opening to start off a Thor run. Disclaimer, I have not been reading Thor for a long time. I have been skipping what Jason Aaron's been doing. I don't know where Thor left off. I don't care. I don't want to know. This is a start. I'm coming in fresh. So I'm not going to count anything. I'm probably going to miss things. People are like, well, I don't know. I shouldn't need to know. This is a number one issue. But the way it starts with these panels, with just the hammer flying through the different realms, I loved this. I loved seeing the visuals of the lands, just reminding me of the different realms and what they look like. I really hate heaven. It's a stupid thing. Oh, look, we're going to bring Angela, and then she's from heaven. It's one of the 10th realms. Oh, no, it's not a 10th realm of, but whatever, Marvel. Speaking of Angela, it was a character they don't even use, like, just waste while they try to make Jane Foster into something that no one cares about. They could have Angela instead, but whatever. That's not what this video is about. I love how it's come crashing down, and we see New York, and there's a big monster fighting the Avengers, and this just comes crashing through the back of its head. Look at that. I mean, that's just such a metal shot. And then monster crashes. The old king is gone. Long live the king. My name is. And we see the hammer. We see the Avengers standing around. It's like, what the? Hey. And then Tony Stark, anyone have a Sharpie? And he's got a shit-eating grin there. Asgard, the city of the sky, home of the gods, the kingdom of Thor. And you see him holding out his hand. This is just a cool pose with the ravens on his shoulders. I think that's awesome. He's holding out his hand. Didst thou see that, Lady Sif, eh? Yes, Thor, I see everything. All 10 realms, one throw. Odin himself could not make that. Yes, Thor, it was a very good shot. And I like how Donny is recalling that Thor, he's a bit boastful. He's a bit proud, and he's not losing that edge. Thank you, Donny, for remembering that. He's kind of a show-off. I hate that Lady Sif is somehow now just got Heimdall's powers. Heimdall was a god. He's one of the most powerful gods of all of Asgard, and we can just slot in Lady Sif now. Whatever. I guess I just have to accept it. Thor's got the powers of Odin now because that reasons. I'm not a fan of Marvel just reinventing the Norse mythos. I'm not a fan of them taking the mythology and going, you know what? We're just going to tweak it our own way, the way Bendis, tweaks every comic he writes. It doesn't appeal to me. On the other hand, I have to be a little bit open-minded because Donny didn't do this. He was not responsible for the past 10 to 20 years of Thor books, and he is responsible to keep the continuity that Marvel has established, whether I like it or not. And hopefully he can take the lemons that he's got and make lemonade. So I just have to accept that this is the case. It's not his fault. So he looks at the hammer, and of course, Tony wrote with a Sharpie, "Enjoy your retirement." And of course, this is now this has got to be a modern Tony Stark that's being written like MCU Tony Stark, because old school Tony Stark was kind of a bore. He would never do this. So this is kind of weird to me to see that, but I guess that's kind of a good thing, I guess. I think MCU Tony was an improvement over the comics in all actuality. I think anyway, why am I talking about Iron Man? So Sif is telling Thor, like, look, you've been waiting all your life to be king, and like now you are. You're finally the king of all of Asgard. And Thor, he's just not happy. This is sometimes just like, be careful what you wish for. This feels like a theme that Donnie's kind of broaching here. It's like, you want to grow up and you want to be king, but now you are king, and now you have all the responsibilities that come with it, and it's not as great as you thought it was gonna. When you're not king, when you look at it's like when we look at celebrities and we go, oh, look at their lives must be so wonderful and everything because they're rich and they're famous and all this stuff, and then if you actually become that, you realize all the problems that come with it, and that doesn't really bring contentment. And Thor has a question. He says, but what is a king to a god? So we get the opening credits. This is pretty cool. The Devouring King Part 1, The Black Winter. And I have to say, this Nick Klein I'm not real familiar with, but I really like him as a choice for this comic because of one of the elements that I liked about Walt Simonson being the artist during his heyday is that he brings this character to Asgard. I like the environment. I like seeing this world. It helps me escape. It captures my imagination. The narration here talks about how Thor has reshaped Asgard into his image, not Odin's, and that's why it's more natural with trees and buildings that were, I guess, made from hammered stone. So that's a quick explanation of why there's some visual differences. Thor's throne is at the Niflheim, the World Tree, also known as the World Ash. So that's explains some things there, and you can see he's weary on the throne, and they're supposed to have this big party celebrating his coronation, and he's like, leave me, so you could just see right here on his face, he doesn't know what to do. He's kind of stressed, and then his brother Loki appears. So how does it feel to sit on father's throne? I wouldn't know, brother. I've only ever sat on mine. Ha! Nervous then, are we, for your big speech? After all of Asgard is gathered to hear the great golden bird speak, and you always did get that grumpy when you had to act royal. I am not new to the thing, Loki. I have spoken to many in the past. And this is a cool banter between Thor and his half-brother. I love this. This is a great banter that I love. I do not like this version of Kid Loki or whatever this is supposed to be. Again, Donny has to write around the stupidity of Marvel past. But he is writing Loki as Loki. There's a little bit of a part where Loki gets a little too contentious, and Thor says to him, "Is it no longer customary to bow when visiting a foreign king?" In which Loki kind of scowls, but realizes he's been kind of bested, and he's like, just like so many times before with his father, and he bows. Leave me, Loki, and should you enter my kingdom unbidden again, I'll have my ravens rip your eyes from your lying skull. Is it getting heavier then? Thor turns. What? Mjolnir, I don't recall you ever grunting when you used to pick it up. Thor again is just getting under Thor's skin, and he just tosses the hammer, and Loki cowers. No, please don't. But the hammer stops in midair. And Loki's shocked. How are you doing this? I am the All-Father now, little brother, clothed in the power that comes with the title. This is just a cool shot of Thor reaching out and grabbing the hammer. You would do well to remember that. So we're getting established that this is even a new, more all-powerful Thor. And so Cates is setting the stage for these adventures to come are probably going to be even more over the top than we've ever been used to. And it's probably, it's important to establish why this new Thor is going to be capable. Now look at this art here, this background. This is why I was saying I like Nick Klein. It takes you away to this fantastic world. Look at this, the attention. I mean, normally it's like most people don't care to look at buildings and stuff. You wanted to see the cool characters and fights and action, but this is important. Seeing these environment scenes like this, and especially with these great colors, all of this, I just love it. He's about to make a speech, but something happens. Galactus crashes down on the earth. Look at this 2-page spread. Boom! This is something we don't get to see in Marvel Comics. Look at this, the dynamics, look at the action, the over-the-top spectacle of it all. This is one thing I've heard Zach say a bunch of times, and I have to credit to him because even though it's something I knew, I never put it into words before. But comics, one of the great things about comics is that they have no budget, right? Like a movie, right, has a budget, so its special effects are limited, and you have to write around what you can possibly do. Comics don't. You can literally do anything in them, and it doesn't cost any extra money, right? So you should, when you write comics, especially superhero comics, you should think big super big. You want to have things that you just never could do in a movie, right? That's how you take people's breath away and you amaze them, because you're just like, oh, if you write comics with a bunch of people standing around, well, why do I want to read that when I could just go watch a Netflix TV show, right? At least then I'll get actual acting. This is something that a lot of modern Marvel comics and other modern comics too don't get, but Cates hasn't forgotten. And this is just a really cool shot. Look at all the detail. I just love looking at this. This is great. So Thor is like, Galactus, you dare! And he flies over to the fallen Devourer. He's hovering above him. And Galactus just raises his hand feebly. Stop. I came for help. You are the only one who can. The Plague Star, the great black winter, it is coming. And Thor's just hovering over a apparently unconscious Galactus. So the book goes on, and you see like the black winter's coming, the world tree is now dying, and the pacing of this book is almost too fast. Too much is happening too quickly, kind of in my opinion, but I think it's important. This is just catapulting the reader into the story. This whole issue is just basically to sum up, here's the state of Asgard, here's the current situation of what Thor is all about, and then boom, here's the beginning of the plot, here's the hook, we're ready to go. They're not going to spend 6 issues building up into any nonsense, and I really appreciated that. So Thor sends out his ravens to fetch all the different heralds of Galactus, and he wants to know what the hell this Plague Star is, and what's Black Winter, and no one seems to answer him until Silver Surfer shows up, who's now Silver Surfer Black, in case you have forgotten from the Silver Surfer Black miniseries. And he explains that that's what ended the previous universe that Galactus was from, that Galactus survived. And if you've read the Silver Surfer last miniseries, Galactus survived it again. He just recently encountered it, but it's basically coming. It's going to be the end of all things. So stories can't get really much bigger than that, right? The thing that doomed the previous Marvel universe, I guess you call it the Marvel universe, yeah, that where Galactus came from, is now here to doom this universe. So I don't see how it gets any bigger than that. Cates is an idea man. He thinks big, and I really appreciate that, especially for a book like Thor. And so Silver Surfer explains to him that Galactus is their only salvation, because Thor's like, what can we do about it? And he's like, look, I got these 5 worlds. As Herald of Galactus, I've come across these 5 rare worlds. They're very special. They contain special energies, and if Galactus ever consumed them, he would gain all this power, blah, blah, blah. And so I've kept them hidden. But now it's time. I have to show him these planets. We need Galactus at his best, full power. He's our only chance. And then one of the other, I forget the herald's names. What is this? Is it Sunfire? I forget. But she's like, Galactus with more power. Good God. And they're like, which one of us are going to take him? And Silver Surfer, of course, volunteers. But then Thor says, but you will not be alone. And so I was like, yes. Silver Surfer is one of my favorite characters. Donny Cates did a terrific job with Silver Surfer Black. Thor is one of my favorite characters. Now I get a Thor story where it's Thor and Silver Surfer teamed up. Badass. We already have some hints about Thor and Silver Surfer from the Thanos Lives series that Donny did a couple years back, which if you haven't read, I urge you to. It's awesome. And Silver Surfer Black makes an appearance in that. And before you knew that he was called Silver Surfer Black, but now you see the story, you're like, oh, wait a second. I don't want to spoil anything. Go read it. So Thor's kind of getting ready, and he's recalling some of the things that his friends and brother have said, like, I'm afraid your smiting days are over. And he's like, oof. And then is it getting heavier? He's remembering the weight of Mjolnir. And he says the old king is gone. And so he's marching with the heralds, and he comes to confront Galactus, and he tells Galactus to kneel. But Silver Surfer comes forward and says, I can feel you in my head, Galactus. I assume you know the plan. Galactus is impressed that his heralds held the truth from him. And he's like, look, we're going to do this. We're going to evacuate these planets so that you can consume them and everything. And he even bows to him and says, Master, it's showing the respect. Thor, of course, is ready. And Galactus says, no. And Silver's like, what? No, I don't understand. To which Galactus explains to him, no, you don't understand. Like, this is the Black Winter. It's not a being. And he's gazed into it twice. He sees the true death every time you look into it. The first time, his true death was unknown because he was going to escape it, so it was a black void. The second time he gazed into it, he saw his true death, and it was Thor. And so this part was a little unclear to me. He kind of lowers his hand, and it looks like he's, attacking him or kind of destroying him, doing something. And Thor's just like, as this, and everyone's like, Thor, no, that power will kill you. And it's Galactus just blasting him. And he just talks, I did not happen upon Asgard. I did not come here for asylum. If you are to be my end, Thunder God, then we will kill the Black Winter together, and when we are done, I would have you close, so that I may have words with thee. Until then, rise, herald of thunder. So Galactus imbues Thor with the power cosmic. And so here we have Thor, who's now got the all power of Odin. He's got his own powers from, being a thunder god, the powers of Mjolnir, and now the power cosmic that Silver Surfer wields. Jesus. Donny is definitely setting up for an ultra powerful cosmic story, apparently. I'm kind of in on this. Like, a while back, if you would have said, let's make, Thor a Herald of Galactus, I'd have been like, yeah, maybe that'd be a cool what if story, but with modern Marvel Comics and things being in the state they are, and things being so out of place, and I'm like, whatever. I'm in for the ride. I mean, at this point now, the state of things are so askewed that I guess I can tolerate this. And I like the art. I like Donnie's writing. I like this book, the setup. It's a great book. It's not life-shattering. But it's fun. This is what comics should be. This is kind of exactly what I hoped I was going to get when I heard Donny was taking over the book. It is what I'm getting. I like this even better than his Guardians of the Galaxy book, which unfortunately had to end so that he could do this. But I'm glad I'm giving this money and not the new Guardians of the Galaxy book that's launching with Al Ewing, who can suck it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I hope this is something you're enjoying. There's a letter at the end, which I'll just post here. You can pause it and read it yourself, or read the book. This is too long for me to read for you, but I think it's a really cool letter from Donny. He did a similar thing in Silver Surfer Black about Stan Lee that was really touching. This one's not quite as emotional and touching, but it makes me feel good as a fan to hear him say this to the fans and to take this time and write it and publish it in the book. So I really like Donny Cates. He doesn't say everything perfect on Twitter, but none of us do. He writes good comics. I think he cares about comics. I think that's very evident. And that's what I care about. And this is something I highly recommend. So go pick up Thor if you like Thor comics, if you like Marvel comics. This is definitely one that's going to stay on my pull list. This issue alone was just like, boom. This is a launch that the Dawn of X should have been like this. Someone over there should be taking notes. I don't know. I don't want to derail. This is a positive. It's not like a 5-star material, but it's a solid 4 stars, which is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to the next book. I'll keep you posted to make sure that it, to see if it stays at this elevation and gets better, or if it drops off, if it just falls in the toilet. Who knows? Tell me if you're reading this book, if you have any interest, if you like Donny Cates, you hate Donny Cates. What do you think about the current state of Thor, the old state of Thor? Anything you have to say, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.